Good evening, it's Brent here with HurricaneTrack.com. We've just arrived in Tabaco City, that is a Bicol region of the Philippines.
Brent and I talked extensively about the possibility of him flying over to the Philippines to tackle a typhoon using the HurricaneTrack brand of doing things, the remote cam idea, the data collection, and even using his drone piloting skills to, again, take the way that we do things and apply it not to just hurricanes, but typhoons in the Philippines.
I've just traveled over 10,000 miles and I'm finally here in downtown Manila, and it's time to get down to business. I packed as much gear as possible to try and duplicate what we've done with HurricaneTrack in the States. First thing, I need to find myself a driver. It's December 1st, it's about 6 a.m. I think, 6:30, and we're here with Angelo, professional rally car driver. Angelo was awesome. I couldn't have asked for a better teammate. He was ready and willing to go wherever I needed to go. He had a reliable vehicle, he knew how to speak Tagalog, he knew how to speak English, and he knew how to get around the country. It was a complete role reversal. It definitely gave me a great perspective on all the things that Mark has to do and think about and plan for during a mission.
It was really exciting to see how well Brent had connected with Angelo, but now it was time to focus on the track and of course the intensity of this typhoon. It wasn't quite time to celebrate just yet.
In America, we use NOAA for the official forecast. So I did some research and found PAGASA, which is the Philippine government agency that gives out the official forecast. In the beginning, it was showing a possible landfall on the island of Catanduanes. Being an island resident myself, I knew we'd have to catch a ferry to get to an island. And with an approaching storm, at some point these ferries would be shut down. We just spoke with the security and the ports have been closed, so there is no way to get to the island. We reached Tobacco Port to find that the ferries had already been shut down, which was probably for the better because island hopping for a storm is not easy. And this was my first time in the Philippines. I had enough to think about. So, going to reassess tonight and figure out a new plan in the morning.
What I wanted to accomplish by Brent being there was to possibly capture one of these epic flood events on a river system as the heavy rainfall fell over the rugged terrain of the Philippines.
He had never been to the Philippines, and he wasn't there with me now, but he was able to study some maps and come up with some possible locations for the remote cam.
It is truly incredible to think of what we can do using Google Street View and Google Maps, especially for areas where they do have the street view, and believe it or not, this part of the Philippines was covered. I was able to send Brent this information and help him to plan on exactly where we could put that GoPro down there on the river, because I knew that that heavy rainfall could potentially create some flash flooding coming down out of those mountains, that rugged terrain there in the Philippines.
I knew how important it was to set up the GoPro and the Kestrel drop sensor. Mark had done his part, now it was time for me to do mine. We had reached the Laganoy Gulf. This became my most favorite region of the Philippines. It was beautiful. They called it the Riviera of the Philippines. And for a few minutes there, I didn't even think that there was a typhoon just a few hundred miles to the east, ramping up in the warm Philippine Sea and headed right this way.
One thing that I really wanted to accomplish with Brent being there was to cover more than just the typhoon itself. You know, the landscape, the beauty of the region, the people, the places, It's a lot more than just about that high impact, very dramatic footage of stuff getting smashed up by the wind. I wanted to cover the essence of the region, and Brent did a phenomenal job, I thought, in doing just that.
Mark picked out a perfect spot in the Bicol region, right next to the Horowan River, which empties into the southwest side of the Laganoy Gulf.
I put together these video clips and sent them to Brent using WhatsApp, kind of a way to help plan on what we were going to do next. All right, Brent, here's what I'm thinking. This is this river, the Joron River, whatever. I was at a bit of a disadvantage though, because I didn't know the local area, I didn't know the place names, but we seemed to manage pretty well. And as you notice, it comes down out of this area, and I think it's going to fill up with a lot of water. It is on the southwest part of that Laganoy Gulf.
It was the Laganoy Gulf, and it looked like Tisoy was headed right for it in about a day.
I think that's a really, really good spot to document one of the big impacts from this typhoon, and that will be right in this little area right here, Tiwi or Taiwi, however you say it. That's where I think we should have at least one of the cameras.
As the hours ticked on, Tisoy continued to strengthen.
Yeah, it was getting a little concerning. The last thing that we needed was for Tisoy to become this rapidly intensifying super typhoon, especially considering that this was Brent's first time in the Philippines. He didn't need to be dealing with anything like that. Brent and Angelo made it to the spot that I had picked along the Horowan River, actually in the small village of Horowan, and Angelo had negotiated with one of the locals there for Brent to put the GoPro cam case up on top of a pole just off the street. And it was interesting because all the people there were very curious about what Brent was up to. He kind of became a local celebrity.
Being a foreigner, people were quite interested in what I was up to, which is fine. I love talking to people and telling them what I was doing.
Since we kind of figured that the typhoon was going to have its biggest impacts during the night, we decided to use the time-lapse mode on the GoPro. So Brent set it up to take a picture about every half second, which would give us an incredible time lapse. But again, unfortunately, you guessed it, this typhoon was going to make landfall at night.
The first rain band started coming in, and we didn't know where we were going to stay for the night. The power was already out in all these little towns and villages, and it started to look like we may have to ride this thing out in the van. Angelo saw this guy closing up his shop, so he decided to pull in and ask him if he might know if there was some place we could stay.
It's close. They have rock. My door, maybe? Quite close.
I didn't need to speak Tagalog to know what he said. He gave us this weird look and said, "You want to stay here? Did you know there's a typhoon coming? You gotta get out of here."
My suggestion was for them to head up to the northwest corner of the Laganoy Gulf in this little village called San Jose. It really wasn't important for Brent to be in the core or the eye of this typhoon. Not his first time in the Philippines, that was not our main focus. The biggest thing, of course, was to keep him safe.
4:30, December 2nd. Found the last hotel in San Jose. This is going to be where we're sheltering out. Not bad though, concrete building, very small room.
This was my first time to the Philippines, and I'm just a rookie storm chaser. I wasn't expecting myself to chase down the core at all costs, especially at nighttime. One of my main interests anyways is to be able to document the impacts, and I had plenty of time for that.
981 millibars. 12:50 a.m. $12:28 a.m. December 3rd. Looks like the Globe AT&T network went down. No more internet, no more texts.
The two of them rode it out there at the small hotel in San Jose. I would say it was about 12 hours later until I heard from Brent that everything was okay. As it turns out, he didn't document anything that dramatic. It was nighttime. He was not in the core of the Typhoon, and there really wasn't that much to see. But at this point, with day breaking, he has got a heck of an adventure ahead of him.
I don't think they're going to have power for a couple of days. Maybe no power for a couple of days. Road's getting a bit more treacherous. How many kilometers we've gone since hotel? 10 kilometers?
Hotel in, I think 10 kilometers.
Yeah. We probably traveled maybe 10 kilometers south of San Jose. What'd she say?
He said big trees in the road. Things blow.
Maybe not. How are they gonna cut the tree? They have chainsaw? With machete? That's big tree. That big tree for machete.
Yeah, you heard that correctly. The locals said that they were going to chop that big old tree up with machetes. Now, you got to understand, Brent is not one that just wants to wait around. He wanted to get back to Horowan to retrieve the GoPro case and get the drop sensor. So he did what he does best. He solves problems.
You got the key?
He and Angelo basically rented this motorbike from one of the locals to complete the trek back to Horowan, and I gotta tell you, this was awesome. This was incredible. Brent and Angelo got it done. I don't know if I would have had the stomach for that thrill ride through the Bicol region of the Philippines right after a typhoon. This is what I was talking about regarding documenting more than just exciting scenes during a typhoon. Anyone with a camera in the right place at the right time can do that. This motorbike trip back to Horowan, what a way to experience the real Philippines. I mean, talk about being totally immersed in it. I'm not sure if that whole Turn Around, Don't Drown campaign has made it to the Philippines quite yet. The mudslides and the landslides in the Philippines after a typhoon are definitely a big problem. After a little bit more effort, Brent and Angelo had made it back to the GoPro campsite. Brent had sent me this great picture of him, kind of this GoPro cam typhoon selfie. The river was swollen, but fortunately it did not overtop its banks or impact the small town of Huracan too badly. The GoPro camera produced an interesting time lapse. Nothing too dramatic with it, but it proved that it would work. Brent also set out a couple of these Kestrel drop sensors to capture the air pressure of Typhoon Tisoy. This worked really well, and as you can see, the sensor in Huracan logged a minimum pressure of 978 millibars, which was about 50 miles from the center, while the one that Brent had with him in San Jose was a few millibars higher. After collecting the equipment, it was time for Brent and Angelo to say goodbye to their new friends there in Huracan. Now they wanted to get down to Legazpi City, and this was going to be quite the arduous task, I assure you.
A lot of roads closed. On a detour.
Once we reached Legazpi, I was wasted tired. It was dark and the entire city was out of power. Once again, Angelo took care of business. He found a hotel with a generator and a restaurant. We got there, I basically opened up the door and dove into my bed. I woke up, opened my eyes, and bam! Right there in the middle of this huge window of my room was the Mayan volcano. I thought I was dreaming.
When Brent would have time to send me a few pictures and even some short video clips from Legazpi City, I was floored.
I had purposely booked a trip with extra time to get a little vacation, and it turned out to be an incredible journey documenting the aftermath of a typhoon. The next few days, Legazpi became a smoldering fire pit. Apparently, there's no type of organized government cleanup of all the organic debris, so everyone was just piling it up on the side of the streets and lighting it on fire.
Brent did a remarkable job for his first time intercepting a typhoon. Even though I was thousands of miles away, I felt like we were able to work together to make things happen and introduce our brand of observation and documentation to the Philippines. I know that Brent had fallen in love with the area and he definitely hated to leave.
It has been an awesome year for all of us. I was involved with this fascinating project and getting to work with some really great people that had the same passion as me. As I was wrapping up things here in the Philippines, I was thinking about how proud I was to be a part of this. We had accomplished so much this year, and we were really looking forward to 2020.
At the end of December, news reports began emerging from China regarding a mysterious pneumonia-like illness. At the time, It was not known whether or not this virus was easily transmittable, or what effects it may have outside of Asia.